Okay, we are live here at the Austin Revolution Film Festival. I am your omniscient voiceover guy because I'm also running the camera back here, James Christopher, and we have one of our favorite panels that I've come up with. We're talking about directing as a duo. We have two dynamic duos down here with us. We're going to start with with my right, your left. Can you introduce yourselves and go down the row and tell me a little bit about which film you guys worked on?
Hi, I'm Courtney Spizzato.
Mark Spizzato.
And we worked on I'm Losing You.
I'm Mara Byer.
I'm Matt Byer.
And we made Away.
So the whole purpose of this panel is to talk about people that direct in a team, that they write in a team, and it's not something for everyone. People have different levels of success with it. But I want to start with the Spizzatos. Explain y'all's relationship to each other, because I think it's sort of neat, the dynamic we have going.
We're married.
To each other.
To each other,
You can move your microphone down so it's not so,
Is this,
and tilt it this way.
oh, here
Yes.
There
we
you
go.
go.
Speak into the microphone. There
So
we
you
go.
guys are hitched.
We are.
We're hitched.
Yes.
Upon your hitching, were you into movies, like working in film before you guys got married, or was this a thing that came as a result of being married?
Well, I went to film school and I'm an editor. That's my day job. And we got married and we weren't making films together. But I always said, I was like, he's so creative. He's such a good writer. I'm like, you'd be a really good director. And then he knew that I'd been wanting to make my own stuff. And he's like, let's just try it together. And I hadn't made something since film school. And I was like a little nervous. So it was so awesome to have a partner to get me through that first experience. And then ever since, we've just been doing it together.
I was going to make a joke about this being a family festival, but I'm too tired for it. But you would like to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, for me, it's been a crazy new thing in my life. I've been watching her, kind of speaking to the mic, do this since I met her, like at this point, 16 years ago. And for me, like seeing her enthusiasm and her passion for film specifically was just contagious. And I just wanted to get in on it. So about now, I guess 6 years ago, we did our first short and I kind of caught the bug, and I'm not gonna look back.
I do love that you have a shirt that says "Fix It and Pre," because my students are still like, "Oh, we should just fix it in the edit." Yeah, I'm gonna fix it by tossing you out a window. Now, you guys talk a little bit about y'all's relationship and where your beginnings of making films together started.
Yeah. So we are siblings. Matt is my brother. This is our first project together. He's a writer, I'm an actor. We're sort of doing our separate things in our career, but we always had plans to work together one day and make things. And then he had this idea for a short come into his mind, and we were like, maybe the day is today where we make things. So similar to you, this was our first project, and it was really nice to do it together, because you kind of were like, okay, I'm not alone in this. Even if I don't know what I'm doing in this moment, he'll know what, and vice versa. We can kind of fill in the gaps. So it was a really fun way to start.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, so we went our separate ways. I moved to SoCal for 2 years of film school before I left. Wasn't my thing at the time, but I've been doing like day jobbing and copywriting, corporate video stuff. So I had that experience
And all the gear.
and all the gear. So over time, like photography, we used every lens I've ever bought in this little movie, and it all worked out. But yeah, so over time, I've been like writing scripts and trying to get pilots out there and all that, and then we finally had a chance, like a very, very small week-long window, to shoot this movie before our star gave birth, or she passed the threshold of she can't fly anymore. So
She was pregnant.
Yeah, she was pregnant. So then we kind of just
Did
it. And yeah, so it's kind of for us a learning experience to see what we were capable of with no crew and just us and two actors. So it was very, it was a great learning experience. And yeah, anything to add on that?
No.
So for us, actually, this is our third time doing it together. So, if the first one didn't work out, we would probably not have kept going. But, we actually have 4 in the can, and we're, developing 5 and 6. So
Yeah, so the
It's-
question, are you guys gonna do another one?
We'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's a question for his brain. I'm like, so where's the story?
Well,
Yeah.
but that brings me like, oh, and we'll start with you guys and go the other direction. But division of labor in the before the movie is shot process. How much autonomy do you have on the script versus how much of it ends up becoming by the end of it the thing you both wanted to work on, and how much space you have to give each other, or how much is it a collaboration through sort of every step of the way?
I mean, in terms of the script, Amara's always my first person to read anything. So feedback goes through her, whether it's a book or a script or anything. If it doesn't hit with Mara, it's not going to hit with me or anybody in my head. So I think in terms of, we did some story development, and then Becca, who's in our movie, we did a little bit more because she was pregnant. We're like, ooh, we got to switch this up. So that kind of worked its way into the story. So then otherwise just notes. And then when we were editing, you know, Mara had a lot of like times where she's like, it's dragging. Like, let's cut this, let's cut that. So there's kind of writing in the editing room also from Mara. So
Yeah, and it is being the partner who's not the writer can be tricky to figure out what your place is in that, and the balance of that. I think we did a pretty good job, and we have the same artistic brain. So usually if one person has an idea, the other one's like, oh yeah, that's the right thing. But it was something like as we were on set that you'd think I would have thought of this ahead of time, but I was like, oh, this is a little awkward for me sometimes when he's the one who like had the vision in his brain first, where it's like, okay, does this fit your vision? But what about my vision? What about our vision? And so it took a little bit of navigating that, but I think we did it, and especially like in post and on set too, in our direction on set, we really like had similar ideas for what we wanted and how we wanted certain things to be effective. So I think it felt like ours in the end, not like something from his brain that I helped with. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how far apart are y'all in age?
3 years?
Because I'm
a
trying
little
to,
less than 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated what it's like to have siblings who like each other. And I get that this is not my therapy session, but I'm really curious. Actually, my youngest brother is actually here working his ass off upstairs. But, so you guys, how does that work? Especially now you're living in the same space. How does that beginning part for the script work? Where how much sort of emotional space do you need to start writing, and when does the collaboration start?
Yeah, we started off our first film we wrote together, and that was like surprisingly smooth. We were on a plane and we were just like, let's just write a script, and we worked on it the whole time we were on the trip, and then we just shot it. But you know, with the newest ones, we actually each wrote, like I wrote I'm Losing You, the one that's screening here, and he wrote another one that we're gonna hopefully shoot next. So we kind of like decided that, you know, we have, you know, differing interests of kind of what we want to make. Like he's super into sci-fi. I was into trying something like surreal. So, you know, we give each other enough space to like get the ideas out, and then, you know, try not to rush to judgment on it until they're ready, you know, for the feedback. That's something that I kind of had to like, he's better than I am with that. But
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, you're forgetting Hey, It's Me, which
Yeah.
screened here last year.
that's right.
And you know, that was an experience where it kind of started with one of us, and I wrote that one and spent a long time with it being kind of in my brain, but then Courtney came in and made it a lot better and a lot more clear. So I trust her, and if I didn't trust her, I wouldn't let somebody, you know, do that. But I've learned that, you know, it's not anything I can do alone. The way I approach filmmaking is as part of this partnership, always.
So that leads to the next thing I want to ask. 'Cause a good marriage is all about trust, and it's about emotionally like supporting each other. How much of it is sort of amplified when you're now talking about something that you write is going to be part of your guts or whatever it is, and you're not even, so you have to deal it from this perspective of we have to make this product while also making sure that whatever you're trying to say is preserved in the context of a marriage.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think
Bravo
that,
for answering first. I would've been like,
you know, I tell it like it is. You know, for me, I think like we're both working on features. We haven't shot any features yet, but with shorts, I think we're very aligned, even if it starts out as something that, you know, is more of an interest for one of us. We, you know, we very quickly get on board, and there's a lot of synergy. And I think a bigger scoped project like a feature, that's a little bit more, I think, of a territorial thing for us, and maybe there's a little bit of, you know, friendly competition going on. But so far with all the shorts, it just, when it starts coming together, we just have very similar sensibilities, and we are just kind of supportive, and there's never any feeling like, you know, someone's voice isn't coming through, because we are very different. We're very different people. I think you'd agree, right?
Yeah.
Very, like, it's weird. Like, we complement each other, but we're not similar people. We're almost like opposites in a lot of ways, but somehow we're complementary.
Yeah, like, you know, being in a duo is actually the only way I'd want to be doing this, because like my day job as an editor, one of my favorite parts of that is that I have an edit and I think it's like, this is great. And then I have the producers come in and they're like, oh, what about this? And it's an idea that I didn't think of it, because my brain works one way, their brain works another. And it just opens up this whole other world of possibilities. And like, that's what I find with directing. It's like, wow, it's like, because we do have the same, you know, general taste, he opens up ideas that I didn't think about and vice versa. And I just think it just strengthens the film.
so let's take the same question in a different direction with you guys as siblings, because that relationship is obviously very different. It, I think, can be maybe in some ways a little tougher than obviously being in a marriage. So how do y'all bridge y'all's relationship as you're working on this stuff, but also knowing that you also have a country between you? So is it easier to deal with that stuff?
That's a great question. Matt and I, well, we're siblings. We've also always been soulmates, and best friends. And with that is like, with that intense closeness can come intense friction and conflict. Like, I often have told people, Matt is who I'm closest to in my family, and also the one that I fight with the most. But I think for our working relationship, for the most part, because artistically we've always been so in line, there were certain like sibling dynamics that after our shoot we had to like unpack and sort through, like for next time, to be like, okay, well, this didn't feel good because this felt like past history baggage of you being my older brother and blah blah blah, you know. So there were, you know, some stuff that we had to kind of work through a little bit, but overall I think because we have that closeness, it actually made it a lot easier. Like, we can communicate almost non-verbally of like, oh, what about the, you know, and like we just kind of have our own language. So I can't really see myself doing this with anybody but Matt.
Yeah, I agree. And just thinking back to when we were kids, not before we even started making like crappy little VHS movies or
that's always been our childhoods. Yeah.
Making chase movies through the neighborhood and stuff. We watched the Oscars together every year. It was like the biggest night of the year, and Moulin Rouge is an example of
just
pops
like
in my head.
loved movies.
Fellowship of the Ring. These movies came out, and we were just awestruck by them. And so we kind of, our tastes were very similar. We developed a very similar language. So, and even with writing, like, you know, books and scripts, like sending them to Mara as a draft, like, as I said, if it doesn't work for her, it's not going to work even for me long term or whatever. So getting her voice it's like another set of my own eyes in some ways, and then also a really good check on stuff that's, you know, doesn't work. So it's this weird, we're really similar but different. Yeah, symbiotic is a great way to put it.
I want to jump to post, and then we'll go to the pre-production stuff, because I was thinking about you as an editor. You know, in film, you can do a lot of compromises and stuff like that, but sometimes specific choices work better for a movie than a compromised one. So how do you find when it's time to say, I have to just trust that this is what you think is going to work, as opposed to finding some kind of middle ground that might maybe be lukewarm to an audience. So we'll start with you guys. And does that make sense what I'm trying to ask? Yeah. You're like,
Yeah.
nope, it does not.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
that would be for you to answer, right?
well, you're the editor, but I would say, you know, in my experience, we haven't compromised. I think part of that is we write things. We haven't compromised because we write things, at least for shorts, where the features are a whole other thing, but for shorts and especially for I'm Losing You, we only write within our means. We know what we're trying to tackle, and then we know it's something we can handle within that scope. And then Courtney does incredible things to enhance it in ways that I couldn't even imagine with the edit, and even delving into visual effects, which is something she wasn't doing until, you know, we had to kind of take that on our own, specifically for this movie. You know, it started with Hey, It's Me, and
Yeah, but there's so for the film that we're playing here, I'm Losing You, the opening sequence, we were really not in agreement on that. Remember that? I tried
she calls
something.
notes being not in agreement. I had some notes.
This is what I've been looking for.
But
I had
I
some
think you
thoughts.
were getting at what happens when there's a disagreement in the editing room and who kind of makes the last call.
Well, yeah, because I think sometimes somebody has to make the last call. So
Right.
when does the partner say, this might be when the one area where the better of the film, I'm going to let that be the choice.
Yes.
That kind of, okay.
So in that case, I just felt so strongly about it. And I was like, can you just sit with it, you know, for a couple of days? Can we keep it this way and just sit with it? And then we'll watch it again next week. And he watched it, and, you know, I just said it's staying that way. And pretty much. I mean, and then he kind of came around to it because I made a case for it, and I felt so strongly it shouldn't change. And I think he just, you know, trusted what I felt and came around.
I mean, I trust her, but I came around because, you know, I asked to see other things, and she kind of kicking and screaming did it, you know, showed it to me. And
It's not going to work.
at the end of the day,
All right, I can waste all of our time if you'd like me to.
at the end of the day, the best product, the best version of itself is going to win. And we're both really stubborn people in our own ways. I would say, would you agree?
Yeah.
We're both very stubborn, but I'm more of in your face about it, right? And so, you know, I really, if I didn't believe that this was the right thing to do, and if I still thought that what I was asking for was better, we wouldn't be here now, because I'd still be fighting for it. So I you know, when I realized that this is the right way to go, you know, that's when I backed down. So it's just about the quality of the product, and in that way, I think we're both good about putting egos aside once we have it in front of us.
That's that's a really good way to put it. And just taking the space from it and watching it again, it just makes it kind of reveals itself, which way does feel better.
And we do agree. That comes back to maybe we have separate interests, but in terms of quality and even the films that touched us the most, we agree. We have very similar tastes, and we agree about what's good and what's not good, you know, almost all of the time. So when we see it in our own work, we both can tell.
So obviously, when you guys have, it's a different dynamic that you can overstep with the film process. We're gonna get to that a little bit, but now you guys as siblings, how does that work for y'all? Because you've already talked about sometimes some old stuff can come up. You know, I know that I want this cut, but you took my bike when I was 3. So how does it? She's like, wow, I must have hit a nerve.
I have an answer for because there's a particular shot that Mara absolutely called correctly on the set, and I thought it looked okay at the time, and it was totally correct, but I didn't change it, and that was a thing that, you know, later on in the edit, we're the angle, the everything. But I still thought it was sort of okay, but Mara, and the more and more I watch it, I'm like, yeah. So there's.
Yeah, and in that moment, that was kind of our one thing of this issue. I would say the only thing that happened, and that I wish I had been this was a learning experience of no, this is wrong. And I know you're working primarily as DP, but this is not, it needs to be this. And so it was a really good learning experience for me in our partnership of because it is that balance of not having a sibling fight, especially when you're on set and you're trying to keep a good professional vibe. And so that was a really good learning experience, I think, for both of us, of like figuring out when you have a really gut feeling and you just really know, to make sure that we're communicating that this is one of those feelings, because I think we both implicitly trust each other's guts, like artistically. And in terms of post, we didn't really have any issues like that. We are on different coasts, so Matt was like running all the software and doing all the physical editing, and then I was like combing through all the takes and sending him the timestamps of what to use and trying to figure out how to trim down stuff. And he's really good about not having, like, as a writer, like, and maybe it's because we've worked so much together, of me being his first round editor, but like if I have suggestions or edits, he like really takes them seriously. And so like we were trying to figure out how to make the main chunk of our movie like work, and it was just way too long and dragging and not working. And I like came up with this huge cut to like take out a bunch of his writing, and I like sent him a rough cut of what it could look like, and he was like, oh yeah, that's great, that works. There wasn't any like, you may not destroy my written work, so in post, I think because we're both really visual too, so as each of us had different ideas, there was nothing that we felt like, at least for me, I can't speak for you, but that we were like massively compromising on the final product in terms of in post.
Yeah, and I think from a writing standpoint, like, as Mara knows, I'm kind of the first one to doubt myself in my work a lot of the time. So to me, when Mara says something, I usually don't hold on to it too hard, but I mean, there are also times where I'm like, oh, but that gets rid of a backstory piece.
Yeah.
So then it does kind of come around, but ultimately, yeah, the pacing and everything, that mattered more. And yeah, I don't remember any real conflicts. I think sound mixing, things like that, we were under a crunch time before Mara's wedding, and the whole year was kind of crazy.
It was
so
a busy year.
Yeah, like getting a mix right, and I had my Sonos. That's what I was judging based on. We had limited resources in that regard. So I think there are little mini disagreements with stuff like that, but yeah, it wasn't crazy, I don't think.
Before we get into some of the more fun questions, because we haven't gotten there yet, on set then, division of labor. Do the actors hear from one voice? Do they hear from two voices? How do you figure out, how does that work? And how do the actors sort of respond to the idea, if it's more than one voice, that, what they're supposed to do? We'll start with you guys.
Yeah, we divided where I work with the DP and the camera department, and Mark works with the actors primarily, but we always make sure that before we go in, we're aligned on everything that we want. So like the actors, like there's never, like you guys mentioned, you're like kind of communicate non-verbally. Like when we see an actor do a take, we look at each other and we know, oh, that was good or it wasn't. And then, Mark will go and talk to the actor, and I'll block with the DP. And it just kind of just works. Like we storyboard everything together first. So we just make sure it's all ready before we're on set so we can move really quickly.
Yeah, that's how it works. It's by necessity too, by the way.
Yeah.
With her film school background and having, been living and breathing film like her whole life, the technical things that she has to do, like working with the camera department, and even just, even figuring out blocking on the fly, like very quickly. She has this amazing ability to, like, if things aren't exactly working out, she'll just like combine, shots together like in 2 seconds and like talk to the DP and like just make it work. I can't do that stuff, but I do like working with people. In my other career as an art director and designer, it's all about working with people and about communication. So I feel like I really enjoy just directly working with actors, and I think we just kind of found our niches, what's natural to each of us, and it's good to have that initial alignment. Like on set with a lot of stress, then we kind of need to settle into our places, and just get it done.
Yeah, similar. We divided in a similar way. Matt was working as our DP, and I was primarily, my background is in acting and performance, and so I was primarily working with our actors. But then we also would sort of mix and match and check each other's work, and if Matt had a note for them, he would call that out too. And we also rehearsed with them a bunch. One of our actresses actually, who I think shines in the film, she had never acted before. And so I was, but Matt knew her and was like, oh, she's got what I want. And she's got the presence, as he said. And so she's in California. So I was like working with her on Zoom for over a couple months, I think at least. Yeah. Leading up to our shoot. And so then on set, we were kind of mainly in our lane, but then working together. And then similarly, where if you're watching something and you're like, oh, wait, that was great, got it. Or similarly, like, this isn't working. And we would kind of sidebar and chat to be like, what can we do to troubleshoot this and make sure we get what we need? And yeah.
And then there were some times of panic. Because for me, so I, like, given my background with, some film school and job stuff, I was freaking out in the desert. We had basically, the moment from magic hour to sunset to shoot.
Oh, yeah.
And we had clouds in the sky, which meant replacing the sky was going to be horrific. And just, lots of stuff that, like dividing the labor. And I think I was worried about that stuff so much. And I think I let it trickle into anxiety, but things like that I remember as a really good learning experience, partially to I think involve Mara more on that side and even prepare more and be like, hey, this is how this works at a time with camera stuff and all that. And then just looking back and realizing don't freak out openly, things like that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Try not to freak out.
Yeah, I think with the technical stuff, there's a lot of pressure on oh my God, the lens, all that stuff. Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine a conversation where she speaks to you as the DP and you're like, I don't know, I checked with the other directors. Like, so 2 against 1. So again, siblings have a lot of past. Married couples can often have tense moments outside of the marriage. My wife produced all our films, but sometimes she wasn't very involved and she would give me notes at the premiere and I'd be like, it is what it is, because I'm gonna run into traffic if I have to do this again. You guys talk about crossing over. Does it ever cross over? I don't know where to go for dinner, but maybe if you'd done that shot better, we could go here. And how much of that does bleed over into your regular life?
Yeah.
I have thoughts. Do you want to go
Yes,
first?
you go.
I don't know. I'd like you to go first.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I guess this is pretty obvious, but we work a lot better if we're not fighting. It does bleed into the work. If we're having an argument or a disagreement or just a rough time, we have a young daughter, 3-year-old daughter, things are stressful around this time. And when we have the most stress, I think it affects our working relationship. And we care so much about the projects, we don't really do anything unless we're very passionate about it. So we try our best to put that stuff aside, but it definitely colors the experience and sometimes our willingness to really hear each other and listen in the way that we really need to get the most out of it.
Yeah. You got it.
That about sums it up.
That sums it up.
And you guys, I'm assuming most of that drama might be past stuff.
Yeah.
How is it still filtering in, or do you think you've squashed it? I mean,
It's you take this, Mara. This, in the moment of finishing our film, because our post period on the film was also the months leading up to my wedding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was.
How fun for you that must have
And
been.
I moved in the middle of that too.
In New York City.
Yeah, so it was Stressful. So we were sort of, I feel like for some of it in survival mode of like, we'll deal with our stuff later, but we just got to get this done and we got to do the best we can. And so that's kind of what we did. I think we had some conflicts, or we were both really bugging each other a lot, but we just kind of like kept on, kept focused on what we had to do. And then after we were done and wrapped everything up, then we sort of had a couple long phone calls to be like, let's unpack. But hopefully for next time, because I think being siblings was such a long history, I think this actually brought up a lot to put us on a really strong path forward for the future, where it's like, okay, now we dealt with all that and we kind of know how to do this now.
Right.
You
And
know?
even like trigger things like, we had a thing from Garden State where they pull their earlobe. And we had like talked about doing things like that, or like if it's ever like one of those trigger points or whatever, be like,
hop on one
something
foot.
like that. But yeah, we didn't have time
In the
During-
moment to deal with
because
it.
like day job stuff in tech, and then we have the prep for the
Right.
movie, and then other projects like screenplays
Yeah.
and stuff, and there's just no time. So I think, but then we made the time
Yeah, which is important.
after, which was
Yeah.
much needed, I think.
Yeah.
And then, more than just movie stuff, there's just
All the things.
all the things that
Yeah.
we needed
Yeah.
to, because we're different people now than we were when we developed our goals in life. So that was an interesting thing for me, that like our paradigm has shifted as people. And I think for my part, I was operating on the like, we're still the siblings making movies with our handy cam, but that isn't the case. And we've both grown and evolved. And so that was something to unpack, I think. And again, set us on a course going forward of like, to figure out what we want, what we're looking to do, things like that.
And I think at the same time, we're spending a lot of time talking about all our conflict, but we also like, I had a blast doing this with Matt. Like, we had never directed before. And so going into it, I was like, do we know what we're doing? Like, and our first day on set, I was like, oh, this is so fun. Like we intuitively both, like, I found myself just like really confident of like, we need to do this and this and this. And I was like, who am I right now? Like, where is it? And similar Matt too. And so I think at the same time, yes, it brought up stuff that we had to deal with, but we also did work really well together. And
We're gonna
Yeah.
end on the fun stuff.
fun stuff. Yeah.
I was thinking about it as y'all were talking about like the concept of, let's say 5 years from now, you guys are the Coen brothers and you're making big movies. It's an interesting dynamic because you already have the trust that you usually would have to build in your own DP that you would meet and see if it works out. Now you guys have this thing built where no matter what happens, if you get surrounded by other studio people or whatever, you two know you all know you have each other's backs. Has that been something you've thought about, like what life would be like if this thing does change and you guys become much bigger and higher profile? We'll start with you guys.
Yeah, we actually just kind of talked about that because we had no crew. And again, as we mentioned,
Yeah, we did this in a crazy way.
It was just
like we
us.
can do it all ourselves.
Tamara's holding a boom pole in the
Yeah.
desert and I'm behind the camera. I think, I think part of the test of this one was to see what we were capable of fully on our own. And, for me, it's, I have thoughts on that, and like, it's not 100% of what I had hoped for, but it's also like, okay, if we did have the resources and people and team and, any type of team,
Anyone is
I think it'd be great. Like my goal would be to do TV shows first and maybe some movies, but that, once I'm in the machine of that, which I know next to nothing about, like I only know what I've heard. So that I have so much to learn. And I think this put into perspective too, like, how much there's to learn about, the quote, quote, real industry. And then, but also giving us some confidence of saying like, no, we could, if we had XYZ, I think, in terms of executing a vision, I think it gave me a lot of confidence that we could do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just, our movie I view sort of as like a training camp that
Sure.
we did. And probably the next couple of just figuring all this out and how we work and together in this way. But I do think because we've spent our entire lives, I mean, we did spend our whole childhood every summer, we would just film movies where I was always the star and he had like our 90s camcorder following me. Yeah, exactly. So I think just having that, we've always leaned on each other professionally and personally just throughout our whole lives. And so I think to your point, Jim, as things grow, that is something really special that we'll always have, you know, and everything else is so big. We can be like, well, this is us and what do we want? You know, because we have the same, like, what gives us tingles in movies and all of that stuff. Like, that's what we love. And so I think it's cool to always have that to fall back on.
Yeah, I had this really weird situation with that. So I wrote a feature a couple of years ago, and I hired this pretty well-known producer for feedback. And she was like, you got to go out on your own. Like, you're going to do much better on your own as a female filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was just like, I told Mark that, and I was like, I'm not doing this alone ever. Like, I decided then and there, I'm like, there's no way, like, no matter what comes along, like, I'm not going out on my own. We're going to always just be a team. And like that just like really solidified it for me. Like, I don't know, like we both have the same goals. We have the same, like, right? Like ambitions, like as far as like what we want to do with our work. But I just know that like, no matter how, you know, whatever opportunity comes along, I know it's that we're going to do it together, and that's it.
I do think it's, I know before, but I just think it's like, to me, we all hear about the shitty part of this business. If you have somebody that you know is ride or die, I can't imagine how much easier that's got to make it feel.
It makes, I wouldn't be able to do it without him. Like I'm a very shy person, and like he's so outgoing, and it just like opened up this part of me that made it possible to like be my full potential, you know. It's true.
Well, I somewhat disagree. I think Courtney could do it on her own, and I think she'd be great at doing it on her own. It wouldn't be the same thing because a lot of my sensibilities come into the work that we do together. But I certainly absolutely could not do it on my own unless I radically changed my life and stopped doing other things that I'm passionate about. So I really think in that sense we're two halves of like this, this filmmaking entity. And back to our goals, Courtney hates the spotlight. I really like it, but that's not what's driving us whatsoever. What we really care about is just being able to continue to tell stories. Stories mean so much to both of us. Before I tried to become a filmmaker, stories, I thought I was just a consumer of them, but they just were like part of my life since I was like 3 years old. It's just so important to me in all different forms, all different media. And Courtney, in that sense, we're really kindred spirits, and all we care about is being able to like make these things, make these stories and experiences that we can share with people and continue to do it. So whether that's with, a few hundred, a few $1,000 budgets, or, a few $1 million budgets, or even more than that, that's not going to change why we're doing it. And it's funny, we also had this brush with Hollywood, and very obviously it didn't happen because you didn't read about us in Variety or anything, but we had a TV series idea that was based on our Hey It's Me short, and it made its way all the way to a huge production company, director-producer. We had meetings, they started talking about, taking it all the way up the chain to see if they can get it packaged, and then it came apart. But we, during that process, we talked about like, what do we want out of this? And we were very clear that we don't, number one, we're makers. We don't want to just sell our stuff to people and have them take something we care so much about and then turn it into their product. So we just agreed, like, we're going to see this through, and we have our creative, demands. Like, we wanted certain things in any potential deal to happen that we just were not flexible with. Like we wanted to be able to still have ownership, our creative voice to still be part of the project. And we both agreed up front, no matter what happens here, when we still thought this was going to actually go, we're not going to settle. So, I mean, I think it just comes back to us doing it, not because of anything like, whatever it is, anything about the Hollywood glitz that comes with it. It's only about being able to tell the stories the way we want to and continue to do it.
I'll be honest, I thought I was good at this husband thing, but 2 more questions, and then we're going to open up to our audience. Okay, so you guys are on a romantic weekend away. You guys are a family vacation. At what point does that turn into a pre-production meeting for the next project? I mean, is it pretty all the time, right? Or is it,
We both are writing in our hotel room.
Oh my
We
God.
both have scripts that we're writing.
Take a break.
It's true. It's like constantly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of sometimes tell ourselves like, well, there are other parts of life, and we need to kind of address other things, even like in our relationship, because it is such a big dream that we have and we're trying to make happen, and it kind of consumes everything. So yeah, it's always on the mind.
That and our daughter doesn't leave a
Of
lot of
course.
room for other
It
things.
really doesn't, yeah. And you guys, I mean,
No, go ahead.
like at what point I think on Thanksgiving, the Cowboys game is over. It's
So I want to say Mara is way better. Tell me if I'm wrong too, but I think Mara is way better about taking a break because her life, like she's in New York City doing all of these things, and I'm isolated in Marin County in California. So I'm always like, oh, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, I have this project going on. And if we're at a family thing, sometimes I get the vibe that it's, hey, can we talk about this another time or something? But then
a work call. On
yeah.
this?
So for me, I'm always gunning to like talk about stuff because I don't have anybody to talk about it with other than Mara and my best friend. But I think Mara has she's better at being able to compartmentalize those things.
I would say we talk about it a lot when we're together. And then sometimes though I'm like, I just kind of need to like take a break because work life, when I am in New York in my work life, being an actor and doing all the things, like it's just so much constantly that like if we're home in Minnesota with our family and our nieces and nephew, I'll be like, let's table this. I'm gonna be a human being for a while. And so that's definitely something that I know about myself that I need because I don't have anything to bring in whatever artistic role of my many jobs that I do. I can't do it if I'm running on like complete empty. And so, yeah, I will say to him, like, this sounds great. Let's FaceTime later.
And I'm like a hurricane in my head.
Yeah.
So like all I want to do is get it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I'm like,
So the boring question is, you guys both still screen at ARF. So when do y'all screen and what project is next?
So we're screening tonight at 5. Very excited. Well, I'll leave it there. Our next project is, we think, going to be our first feature. That's what we're
Fun.
hoping for. Yes. That's our next project we're going to shoot. We also do have another short documentary, our first documentary we made together that it's finished and we're going to premiere it soon. So it's coming up.
We screen tonight at 8 p.m. and our next project is a work in progress in his brain, but I will be in it this time.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Is the goal. And
So we
but we'll still direct it
kind of
together.
writing around that, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mara directing herself is
It's
gonna
gonna be
great,
weird,
and
yeah.
I think it'll be
Yeah.
totally fine. Yeah, but I'm more of a long form storyteller, I think. So doing a short, like my ideas are very sparse, if that's the right word. So figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Courtney. So mom guilt. Do you wrestle with that? And yeah, how do you
She does.
Because I have a lot of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I have 2.
Oh, what ages?
So they're 8 and 7, and they both want to go into film. So
Oh,
I
that's
love that
great.
I'm here because you guys remind me of my children so much.
Oh.
In all the best ways. In all the best ways.
I have such intense mom guilt. And there's really like, I don't know, there's really no getting around it for me. The only way that I can do it is I make sure that when I'm with her, and
Yeah.
like, I'm not like focused on anything else. And it's just like, that's my time with her. And I just try to block out, the times that she's at school or at daycare. And luckily I get to work from home, so I can kind of sneak some time in to like do writing or like edit our projects together. But it's really just about like making sure she knows that I'm like focused on her when I'm with her.
They really wanted to come with me.
Oh
And I was
man,
like,
I'm so sad that she's not here with me. It's so hard.
I'd like to add something
yeah,
to
is
that.
it dad guilt?
No, well, not. It's
No.
more about no. There's no dad guilt, but this is why, and I think this applies to all parents. But I know the mom guilt is fierce, and so this is for all the moms that are doing creative things. I have 2 parents who are my creative role models. They're incredible artists. They're both graphic designers. My dad's an illustrator. Since I was a kid, I looked up to them, and that's why I do creative things. And I wouldn't probably feel quite the way I do about them today if they gave all that up, just to be a parent. They wouldn't. I'd love them, but they wouldn't be my heroes. And I think realizing your full potential and showing your kids that like you could actually do incredible things and be true to yourself and to like not give up on your dreams. I think that's being a good parent, and that's showing them, teaching them that they should be doing the same thing. Because I just think it's really important, if you have a dream, chase it and try to make it happen, because not everyone has ambitions like that.
And I feel you guys, as my daughter mixes margaritas upstairs, I feel like, definitely you guys? Oh, we already answered.
We
didn't
don't
we?
have children.
Yeah.
I'm getting a puppy, so I'll
Yes,
circle
that
back
is
if
a
there's
lot.
Ooh,
puppy
what
mom
kind?
guilt.
What kind?
A Bernese Mountain Dog. He was born January 21st.
Oh,
Precious.
precious.
March 18th.
Yes, that is a real thing. For sure.
I just bring mine with me. You tie some gaff tape to him, and now you got a grip.
That's so sweet.
Thank you guys so much for jumping on and being at ARF, and I can't wait to see you guys whatever is coming next.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank you
us.
so much for having
So
us.
glad to be here.